Hey, it's Elizabeth. My new monthly recipe club, The Nourished Table, is for anyone who's ever stood in the kitchen at 5 p.m. thinking, I have no idea what to make. Each month, I send you 5 hand-picked, pre-tested recipes, a done-for-you shopping list, and simple ideas to turn each dish into multiple meals, so you can spend less time cooking and more time eating well. If you're ready for food to just feel taken care of, come join us at elizabethharrisnutrition.com/recipe-club. It's just $20 a month. You can cancel anytime, and you get access to the growing library of recipes each month.
Welcome to Wellness Rebranded.
We know there is so much conflicting health and fitness advice out there.
And you're tired of the wellness fads, endless diets, and impossible standards that make you feel like nothing you do is ever enough.
You're ready to tune into your mind and body and feel empowered around health.
We're the healing trio here to help you redesign your relationships with food, fitness, and yourself.
I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer.
Together, we're changing the narrative on health away from diet culture, hustle culture, and toxic positivity and towards healthful self-care.
So grab your water bottle, get ready to laugh, learn, and grow.
And let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
All right, Wellness Rebranded fans, welcome back. I'm Tara, and I'm here with Maria and Elizabeth today, and we have a special guest. We have Chetna Sethi. Did I say that right?
Sethi. Close enough. Thank you, Tara.
I struggle sometimes with other people's names. It is what it is. So I know Chetna because we worked together at Gladstone Psychiatry, and we got to know each other through this program where I talk about health and fitness, and she talks about almost lifestyle coaching. And we just thought it would be a really great conversation to have on the podcast with her today. So Chetna, can you introduce yourself and go into a little more detail than I just did?
Sure. Thanks, Tara. And thank you, ladies, for having me. I'm Chetna Sethi. I own Luminous Connections LLC, and this is a business that I started for the purpose of burnout prevention. So I'm an author, I'm an occupational therapist, and I am a burnout prevention specialist and a lifestyle balance coach. And what I do really is help people navigate the culture of burnout and move towards more of a state of balance. And honestly, I kind of needed it myself, which is how I got here. More needed than ever.
Can you tell us a little bit about your own experience and how you got to be passionate about helping with burnout prevention?
Sure. So I spent years, I used to work with parents, and I saw high achieving people. And that includes myself over the years. But I saw them do everything right. I saw them do all the right things, follow all the advice, and still just feel really, really depleted. And so I built a framework that was rooted in my own occupational therapy background and my own PhD work that helps people understand burnout as a systems problem rather than a personal failure. And that framework became my book and now a program which is called Cultures That Bloom.
So what if we take a step back for a minute, because burnout is a word that goes around frequently. Sometimes I even wonder if we all have really a definition for burnout. So from your perspective, what is the definition of burnout, or how does it look like usually? Because I understand it's different for everybody, but yeah, what is burnout?
Maria, that's an excellent question, and you hit the nail on the head. I think that word is overused, and I do believe that in today's culture, we use it as a buzzword. It's become synonymous with being hardworking or being committed to your work. Like, oh, I'm just so burnt out. If you don't say that, people feel like, oh, you must be lazy. You're not working hard enough. What I like to tell people is burnout is misunderstood. First of all, people overuse the word because they think they're in burnout. They're really not. Burnout is a very extreme state of chronic stress that not only bleeds into every area of your life, but starts creating something called cognitive dissonance, where you feel completely separated or switched off from the life around you and you have no meaning left. And so you're doing things just for the purpose of keeping the motions going. And you don't feel a connection to your work. You don't feel like you're making any meaningful progress towards any self-growth, or you don't feel like you're contributing to your work in any meaningful way either. You're doing it either because you're stuck in a rut or because you have to make the money, etc., etc. And so what I like to tell people is a lot of people are in that situation, but the majority of us that end up using that word, burnout, are actually describing what I like to call pre-burnout. And that's really the state where the stress has become so much that it's definitely bleeding into other areas of your life, whether that originated at work or whether that originated at your child's school or in your household or your business, wherever it might be. If it starts bleeding into other areas of your life, that's causing significant stress. And that is what pre-burnout is. And I feel that if pre-burnout is targeted at the right time with the right sorts of interventions, we can prevent the burnout from happening. So my entire philosophy around this is notice the signs, figure out when you're in pre-burnout and prevent it from getting worse.
What are the signs? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
signs? Because
What are the
breathing-
signs, and also what are the different signs between what you would call pre-burnout and actual burnout?
Right.
And what does bleeding into other areas look like? I think that's part of
Sure.
the signs.
Yeah, a few things, couple of different questions there. So what does it look like? Most of the times I've noticed, especially in work scenarios, a lot of business leaders will ask me this, like, how do I figure out that my employees are burning out? What's the sign? What's the red flag? And sometimes I say it's not really the big red flags that you're looking for, like the big irritability or the big temper tantrums or the big communication problems. The first sign is actually withdrawal. The first sign really is you tend to stop being as enthusiastic as you used to be. I call it the enthusiasm gap. That's what you have to look for. The employees that were coming in with new ideas and volunteering to pick up leads are now sitting quietly, not engaging. And that tells you that their plate might be too full. Something about the fact that they're not being able to openly speak up and say, I have too much going on. Or what has shifted in their environment or in their situation that has led to this enthusiasm gap. So it's very subtle, right? You're not really looking for these big shows of dramatic behavior, which is what people think of when they feel like everyone's just getting irritable and having these big toxic work dramas and things like that. And that happens too. Don't get me wrong, that happens in the best of workplaces. But the first signs really are just even saying things like, I feel overly tired, or I feel stretched thin. I feel like I may have taken on more than I can accomplish. I feel like I may have chewed off more than I can swallow. Those subtle cues where a person begins to realize that their plate is getting fuller than typical. Those are the early signs of, okay, do you feel like you need to slow down a second? Are you taking care of yourself? So the people around, friends, family members, they usually notice this stuff way before the person actually does.
It feels like it can be so subtle that it's really easy to miss those initial signs.
Absolutely. And that's when, to your earlier question, Maria, how do you see the bleed, right? How do you see it bleeding into other? And I see this a lot with parents that I work with. And I'm a mom myself. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I realized very early, my burnout story goes back a few years, but I was pregnant with my firstborn when COVID hit. And when we were working from home, I was a university professor. When we were working from home, I felt like my life changed significantly because before that, I was working 50, 60 hours a week. I was grading papers all at a time. If I wasn't grading papers, I was creating lesson plans. If I wasn't creating lesson plans, I was writing papers for publication. If I wasn't writing papers for publication, I was reviewing papers for publication. If I wasn't doing that, I was doing something else. So it was like a cascade of things that I found really meaningful, that I found would help my career. And so I kept doing them. Right? And we do this to ourselves, don't we? We just tend not to say no. And so everything that came my way, I felt like, that's amazing. I'm going to do that. That's amazing. I'm going to do that also. And what I started noticing was that, of course, my time was not my own anymore. So I was barely spending any time with my family. When COVID hit and when we were working from home, things shifted dramatically, right? I was suddenly more present. I felt like I was myself again. And that's when I started realizing that something was amiss. It was clearly in pre-burnout during those phases. And after I had my child and the expectation was to go back to work, the same thing happened again. 4 hours after I delivered, I was sitting on my hospital bed, making sure that my work got handed off appropriately. 4 hours. The nurses came and yelled at me, and I had an emergency C-section.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, my baby came 4 weeks early. So that's what burnout looks like.
You said two things I'm thinking as you were talking. One you said, and one it just made me think of. I think it reminds me a lot of disordered eating and how like disordered eating has become so normalized that often people are praised for it in the world. And like we don't recognize it as problematic because it feels like what the world is telling us we should be, quote unquote, doing for our health. And I think burnout is similar, right? Like a lot of the things that might lead to burnout are things that people are getting praised for and looked up to for. And it's considered like being successful or high achieving or operating at the pace that we think we're supposed to operate at. So that was like one thing that jumped out at me. But then the other one is you said something that I think was really important, that when you were experiencing the symptoms of pre-burnout, that you were actually doing things you love, that you found meaningful and gave you purpose.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to think like, oh, burnout has to be like all the things we don't want to be doing, right? That are just like piled up on our plate.
Exactly. And I think there's different types, right? So yes, there are things that you might be forced to do or you might be assigned to do in a job situation, which might not be meaningful to you. For me, that was not the case, right? And so there's different ways that you can get, and your disordered eating, it reminds me of what I like to call dysregulated participation. So yes, there can be over participation because you might over participate in things that you love and things that you find meaningful, but you do them to the extreme where other things that you find meaningful are falling off your plate and you're not even realizing it. Versus, over participation in the sense that, there's this culture of, well, you don't question the boss and you do what you're asked to do, whether or not that aligns with your values or not. And that's the biggest thing I've seen is when your actions are not aligned with your values anymore, that's when that tension starts happening. So yes, my actions were aligned with my values for a long time because I felt like I was doing things that were so meaningful to me. But very quickly, I realized it took me a while to get there. But when I did get there, I quickly realized that some values that were important to me were being upheld, but other values that were not important to me or that were also important to me were not being tended to at all. And so I was definitely over participating in areas and under participating in others.
Guys, I think I'm in pre-burnout.
No,
that doesn't surprise me, Tara. It also breaks my heart, but it doesn't surprise me.
No, but it just makes me think, Chetna, that when I work at the ER for 12 years, maybe around year 10 or so, I started feeling that even when I was getting ready to putting my scrubs on and getting ready to go to my shift, already without getting to the ER, I would start feeling a knot in my stomach because my body was so trained to the dynamics of it that even the preparation going there, my nervous system was already responding to the stress and everything that I felt during those hours of my shift. And then it came the day, like my body knew that I was done, but my mind was justifying like, but it's such a good job. You're helping so many people. It looks so good on your resume. Like it gives you so good experience that I spent years with that narrative in my mind until one day, and I think I've said it before, I got to work and then I was told something like, oh, we need to do this and then do that. And there's 2 patients waiting, blah, blah. And then I had a breakdown. I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. And I'm quitting. And it's the first and only time that I have quit a job on the spot, grabbed my purse and left. Not good. Do not do that, people. It's not a good thing. But I just couldn't do it anymore, right? And I didn't end up in bad ways with them. Thank goodness they were understanding and they thought it was a temper tantrum. So that was a Friday. They called me on Monday, like, okay, are you feeling better now? Are you going to come back? And I'm like, I am not coming back. And I cried about it, but it felt that I couldn't just give that to my body anymore. So I don't know if that was pre-burnout, if it was burnout the whole way, but I just knew it was like this weight was affecting me. Now, I want to do a parenthesis here as the good therapist that I am to make sure that we also know the difference between burnout and depression, okay? Because
Yes.
burnout can lead to depression, but there is a difference. When you're going through burnout, we kind of expect that you still feel like yourself and that you're still enjoying other activities that don't have to do directly with a specific stressor, which let's say in this case might be a job, right? But if what is happening is that loss of motivation, and when it bleeds to other areas in the sense that now you're not enjoying anything else, that your mood is persistently sad over time, most of the day, most of the time, then we might be talking about depression. So I just want to make sure that we make that difference because one can lead to the other. And I also don't want people going through depression thinking is burnout and then not get the right support or the right treatment. There's that.
Spot on. I love that explanation because you're absolutely right. And this is why I kind of hate labels, but then, you also got to love them because that's what gets you services.
Yes,
but yeah, you're absolutely right. That's something common, right? Because when you are truly in burnout, and Maria, my story is very similar to yours in that entire time that we had work from home, and then I felt better. And then we went back to campus. And because we went back to campus, I had to send my daughter to daycare, which meant that we all got COVID pre-vaccine. And after 2 weeks of feeling like I was going to die from COVID, the second I felt better, I called my boss the next day and I said, I'm quitting. And that's how it was. There was no deliberation of, okay, I'll give my notice in. And no, it was literally I'm done. I'm done. Like this experience of almost dying, it made me realize that what I was running towards was not what I really wanted. And, academia was all I knew. I was all about education from day one, and people really asked me, it's like, you're so brave. Aren't you scared? And I was just like, honestly, I feel like I have a life to start living. Like I didn't remember the last time I'd picked up a book for pleasure. And that's what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to read. I want to read Harry Potter again. That's the first thing I did, to be honest. I read the entire Harry Potter series.
I love that for you.
Okay, ladies. So if Tara's feeling like she's in pre-burnout, do we need to be worried she's going to quit the pod tomorrow?
Tara, talk to us.
Let's prevent, Tara.
Well.
Let's prevent.
No, I'm here. You guys are stuck with me. Thinking about launching a podcast or taking yours to the next level? Juliana Barbati and her team are the experts you need. They take care of everything from episode funnel design to production and marketing, so you can focus on creating content that connects. Check out julianabarbati.com and mention that we sent you. And while we were talking, I was like thinking about this, and I think I was in more pre-burnout than I am currently. So I feel like I might be coming out of it a bit. It's funny, when I started working at the gym, you guys might remember this. We did an episode like at the very beginning of the podcast talking about gym anxiety and things like that. And it basically read like a commercial for Edgewater Fitness to be like, come to this gym, and at the end we were kind of like, was this the point, right? Like we talked about that episode, and I think we actually ended up editing a bit of it, but that was like before the burnout set in. And then years later, it was like, okay, this is not all kittens and moonbeams anymore. And much like Chetna, when I left the gym and I've been on my own now, it was like my life. I was able to start living it the way I wanted to at this point. And I also read a lot for pleasure, usually spicy books, but also Harry Potter. So I kind of feel like, yeah, there's definitely like a wave that, kind of sometimes more pre-burnout, sometimes less.
And that's perfectly natural. And I've noticed that as well. There's, because depending on the season of life you're in, depending on, whether you have little kids, whether you have grown-up kids that are leaving for college, whether you are just starting a business or whatever else might be going on in your life, there's going to be those dips and those bumps and those ups and downs. And, the important piece is, as you all are already doing, thanks to this podcast, each of you has your own way of grounding yourself and centering yourself and saying, okay, well, how am I feeling right now? What am I doing for my health that's making a difference and what's not? And that's the number one thing. Awareness is the number one thing. And so one of the things that I do with my clients, really, my coaching clients, the first 2 or 3 sessions, all we do is notice. and not doing anything about it. Notice your emotions. Notice what comes up. Notice what you feel. Notice why a certain question was asked to you a certain way. What were the assumptions behind it? What was going on in the culture around you? And what's expected of someone in your position? How are you expected to answer a particular question? So that's really part of, the number one thing I would say is awareness. Once you get aware, then you can start really making meaningful shifts in your behavior.
I think burnout can also be a call or kind of like a wake-up call to reprioritize, to organize your priorities, to really reevaluate what do you want to focus on. Because sometimes we get so many things thrown at us that we just do them. And then all of a sudden, everything comes important. And out of those important things, a lot of them are urgent when they're really not. But we live in this society that almost everything is urgent and important, answering everybody's phone calls, answering all the emails when it's really not. So it could be used also as an opportunity for that. What's on my list and what's really a priority and what is not that I can do later or delegate or not do at all. Absolutely. Which, by the way, and this reminds me of our previous episode on the emotional weight or the invisible weight that we carry. So if you want to connect these two episodes, go back and listen to our previous episode because it is related. Because that emotional invisible weight that we have, that we were talking about with Dr. Creswell, can be related to that burnout. It could be one feeding the other, right? Because of the invisible weight, you also feel that burnout. And because of the burnout, that burnout is part of that invisible weight.
Absolutely. I do a lot of invisible pressures work with my clients as well. You're so right. There's these things that are happening. We don't think about it. We take things on because we feel like we're being a good steward. We're being a good citizen. We're being a good partner, a good friend, a good colleague. And, we do these things, but then they become expectation instead of something that you volunteered for. And once that happens, once you start doing it to fulfill someone else's expectation instead of fulfilling your own meaning, that's when the shift in your processing happens, where you're just like, this is not what I signed up for, right? And that's when that pre-burnout starts creeping in, because that resentment starts creeping in. Like, this is not something that should be my responsibility. I took it on one time and now I just happen to be stuck with it.
So ladies, I think I'm going to break bad. I'm going to stop with all the expectations and stuff. I'm just going to rebel against the world now. Okay, like any expectations
like
you have
more than you already do, Maria?
Yes, more. If you have any expectations of me, Tara and Elizabeth, today is the day. This is it. Okay, I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna break free from all that. Anyway, Elizabeth, what were you gonna say?
I just wanted to ask, Chetna, you said something at the beginning that you think burnout is a systems problem, and I'm curious what you meant by that.
So and this is what my book does, and this is what my program does really is, yes, people have to work at the individual level. Like, we have to build up our own resilience and we have to figure out how to navigate the system. But the system is also broken. And a lot of people have recognized this already, right? Organizational psychologists, Adam Grant does a lot of organizational culture work with, you got to fix the system. The policies can be in place, but if, they're not being applied or they're not being put into use in the appropriate way, then what good is a policy? So it's the system that needs to change. And I agree with that sentiment. My argument is that while the system is changing, what are these people doing that are stuck in a system that's slow to change?
Yeah,
right?
like,
They're not all of them have the luxury of picking up the phone and saying, I quit. People have responsibilities. And so that's really the piece where I feel like having a systems lens is helpful, where you want to know what you cannot change, right? You want to have the capability of observing, right? So being aware of and observing, noticing, and actually verbalizing what you see in the system around you, and being able to verbalize, I cannot control that. And that's actually very empowering because it shifts the focus of, oh, this is my problem. I need to be more resilient. I'm the one that's failing. I'm the one that feels tired or burdened, rather than I can make all the changes I want, but if the system doesn't change to support the changes I've made, then what good are the changes?
Yeah, I think it's
I'm
so
still bailing water out of a leaking boat.
Yeah, it reminds me so much of diet culture and trying to heal your relationship with food and body when you're still stuck in diet culture with all the kind of oppressive expectations about our bodies. And like a powerful step in body image healing is one, just recognizing it's not you, it's the culture. But then also like finding tiny ways that maybe it's like creating a ripple from a pebble in a giant sea, right? But having some agency and feeling like you can make an impact can be an important step of healing, even if it's like the teeny tiniest thing. So it reminds me, like, I think it's very similar. But Chetna, thank you so much for coming and joining us. I think this was like a really powerful conversation. If you could leave anyone out there who's maybe feeling like Tara was, or is wondering if they are or aren't struggling with burnout, or kind of like what's a final thought that you would want to leave people with on the topic of burnout?
Sure. I would say be mindful, examine yourself, and don't ignore what you're going through. It's real. Whether it's a function of what you're going through or whether it's a function of how the environment has acted on you or is acting around you, either way, pay attention to yourself. This resource that I was talking about, it's on my website, luminousconnections.net/pre-burnout. Look that up, put your email address in, you'll get this free guide. It has a great comparison of what pre-burnout is and how it's different from burnout and how to recognize some of the signs and take action before you move into that full-blown burnout phase. Thank you for having me. This was really, really helpful to talk about. And I love hearing all of your stories. And Tara, talk to me later.
Will do. We loved having you on the show. And if you guys are listening and you want a little bit more info about burnout and boundaries, a really great episode to go back to is number 135, where we talked with Tanner Greenwald about having success in high pressure jobs and how burnout and boundaries play a role in that. So go check that out.
Thank you, Chetna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara DeLeon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.